Peace be upon you, God's mercy and blessings visit you. Workers, any day the Palestinian cause is talking about the second part to the spectator on the second part. Hasib, link video in the description box. Some believe that the ambitions of Western Jews in the modern era in the Palestinian territories began since 1561, when the Portuguese Jew Joseph Nassi, who was considered the richest man in the world at the time, tried to build a colony for Western Jews fleeing persecution in the West. The emergence of the Zionist movement and resistance, main article, the Zionist movement and the question of Palestine. In the 80s of the 19th century, Western Jews began to adopt new theories in the colonization of the Palestinian territories based on the idea of replacing attempts at civilian or peaceful control with armed control. One of the biggest adopters of this theory was the World Zionist movement, which said, "The day we build one Jewish battalion is the day our state will be established." In the mid-1880s, the Zionist movement in Europe formed the group Lovers of Zion. The first Zionist Congress was in Basel in 1897. This movement demanded the establishment of a special state for the Jews, and many Zionists believed that the location of this state should be in the place of the Jewish historical state, the area known as Palestine. Palestine was then part of the Ottoman Empire and had a local government, vilayet, and the area was inhabited mainly by Arab Palestinians. Jews remained less than 8% until 1920. This Zionist project was met with popular anger throughout all of Palestine and the categorical rejection of all political figures at that time, including the Mufti of Jerusalem, Amin al-Husseini, Izz al-Din al-Qassam, and later Abdul Qadir al-Husseini, and other political, religious and military leaders. And these were the beginnings of the emergence of popular resistance in Palestine. While the positions of Arab figures and Arab rulers differed in their dealings with this project, some of them supported the Palestinians in achieving their fate. Some of them remained silent, and some of them extended their hand to the leaders of the Zionist movement in order to gain the consent of the British government, such as Prince Faisal bin al-Hussein, who met with Chaim Weizmann, president of the World Zionist Organization, and others. As for the Western countries, they welcomed the Zionist project in Palestine. The project received financial, military, and logistical support from major countries such as Britain, the United States and France, which saw the fact that the Hebrew state, which the Zionists aspire to create in Palestine, is a protection of its interests in the region. The Great Arab Revolution. Main article, The Great Arab Revolution. Sharif Hussein bin Ali declared the revolution against the Turks in the name of all Arabs. The principles of the Arab Revolution were laid down by agreement between Hussein and the leaders of the Arab associations in the Levant and Iraq in an Arab national charter aimed at Arab independence and the establishment of a strong united Arab state, and Palestine was among the constituent regions of this future state. The British government had promised the Arabs through the Hussein-McMahon Correspondence, 1915, to recognize the independence of the Arabs in exchange for their involvement in the war on the side of the Allies against the Turks. The newspaper Al-Qibla published an official statement to raise the four-colored Arab flag, starting from 9 Shaban 1335, corresponding to June 10, 1970, the day of the first anniversary of the revolution. However, Britain broke its covenant with the Arabs, and the Sykes-Picot Agreement and then the Balfour Declaration were ratified to consolidate the Zionist presence in Palestine, separating the latter from its Arab surroundings. The Sykes-Picot Agreement was concluded in 1916 by a secret understanding between France and Britain and the ratification by the Russian Empire of the division of the northern part of the Arab territories, Iraq and the Levant, between France and Britain to determine the spheres of influence in the Levant after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, which controlled this region as a result of its defeat in the First World War. It was decided that the area that was later carved out of southern Syria and known as Palestine would fall under international administration except for the Negev desert, agreed in consultation between Britain, France and Russia. However, the agreement stipulated that Britain would be granted the ports of Haifa and Acre, on the condition that France would have the freedom to use the port of Haifa in exchange for Britain's free use of the Syrian port of Iskenderun, which is under French tutelage. Later, to alleviate the embarrassment that the French and the British suffered after the disclosure of this agreement and the Balfour Promise, Churchill's White Paper was issued in 1922 to explain in a light tone the purposes of British control over Palestine. However, the content of the Sykes-Picot Agreement was reaffirmed at the San Remo Conference in 1920. Subsequently, the Council of the League of Nations approved the mandate documents for the regions concerned on June 24, 1922. Since the beginning of the 20th century, England has adopted a policy of creating a Jewish political entity in Palestine, which they estimated would remain subject to their influence, circling in their orbit in need of their protection and care, and in the future would be an occupation for the Arabs, exhausting their forces and bequeathing them a permanent carelessness that hinders every attempt at unity among them. Britain's policy culminated in the Balfour Declaration, which was launched by its foreign minister at the time. There were common interests with a strategic dimension. Mainly, Britain was worried about the emigration of Russian and Eastern European Jews who were being persecuted. It found that it had an interest in using this operation in its expansion program in the Middle East, so it diverted migrant caravans to Palestine after the promise was issued and provided them with the necessary protection and assistance. The Foreign Minister of England, Arthur James Balfour, issued a promise on behalf of the British King to the leaders of the Zionist movement on November 2, 1917, to establish a national homeland for the Jews on the land of Palestine. This declaration met with the opposition of the Arabs, who were deceived by Britain when it promised them independence if the Arabs sided with it against the Ottomans. And as soon as we're done, Rhett, there will be a video that will be your wonder forgotten. Subscribe to the channel and activate the graz so that they will connect you all new with Islam.